A millionaire went incognito as a homeless man to test his son, and the result was life-changing. George Thompson, a self-made millionaire, stood on a bustling city street, bracing himself against the cold bite of the wind. The city was alive, the sounds of honking cars and laughter blending into a chaotic symphony. Yet, here he was, looking like a shadow among the bright lights and luxury. He pulled the frayed edges of his coat tighter around him, his lined face a map of years spent battling the grind of life, now cloaked in the desperation of someone without a home. He wasn't just observing. He was preparing for a life-altering confrontation with his estranged son. Called that a year ago, George had been living a dream, his business booming, his bank accounts bursting, but the reality of his relationships felt emptier than his pockets once had been. His son had turned into a stranger, lost in a world of designer clothes and lavish parties. George's heart weighed heavy with worry, knowing Kyle had forgotten their humble beginnings, where the only riches they knew were family and hard work, a stark contrast to the glitter around his son now. No longer able to watch Kyle ignore the struggles of those who lived just blocks away from his opulence, George devised a daring plan to test his son's character by living as a homeless man. Life kept buzzing around George. He encountered a worn veteran who shared tales of valor now marred by regret, a tireless single mother who juggled 2 jobs while her kids clung to her legs, and a passionate shop owner whose spirit glimmered brightly despite the darkness of rising rents. Each interaction left a mark on George's heart, confirming what he already believed: the human spirit, through all its trials, was capable of profound resilience. As he watched these brave souls navigate their hardships, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for Kyle, oblivious to the suffering and strength existing in this very city. Kyle, meanwhile, reveled in the luxurious life his father's hard work had afforded. Surrounded by friends who clung to connections instead of sincerity, he laughed, oblivious to the weight of urgency surrounding him. Millionaire parties lit up the nightlife, and designer shoes sparkled against the pavement. Yet beneath the laughter, Kyle grappled with a gnawing conflict, a tug-of-war between loyalty to his father and the glitter that entrapped him. George watched from his corner, heartbroken as Kyle turned his back on a man reaching out for help. It was then George knew this experiment must escalate. In a moment heavy with tension, George stepped forward, ripping off the disguise and revealing the man beneath the rags. The street fell silent, the laughing crowds muted as shock washed over Kyle's face. Father and son stood frozen, years of miscommunication bursting around them like a fragile soap bubble. Painful accusations erupted, raw emotions spilling forth. George's heart was tight in his chest as they confronted years of silence, judgment, and misunderstanding. The city's hustle faded away, leaving only the echo of their hearts pounding as they faced the truth. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they stood there in the bustling city, surrounded by a community that thrived on hope and survival, the weight of their fractured bond pulsed like a wound. Could they bridge the gap between privilege and empathy? George's heart raced with uncertainty, the poignant question lingering in the air. Would compassion be enough to reshape Kyle's life marked by entitlement? With everything at stake, their next steps would determine not just the strength of their relationship, but how they might uplift those forgotten in the shadows around them. The silence between them was thick, almost tangible. George could see confusion flicker in Kyle's eyes, as if he was struggling to reconcile the man in front of him with the father he had long neglected. George had a million words locked away in his chest, waiting for that one moment when he could finally break free. But all they had were the sharp, raw edges of pain and disappointment for now. George finally spoke, his voice low and unsteady. I just wanted to show you something. Something important. Kyle's gaze hardened. What? Is this some sort of joke? You wanted to save a few bucks by dressing like a beggar? The derision dripped from his voice. It stung, and George recoiled slightly, but he pressed on. No, son, it's not a joke. It's about who we are, who you've become. Kyle scoffed, folding his arms across his chest defensively. The extravagant world he lived in had shielded him from the realities George had been trying to showcase. That very shield had become a wall, thick and unyielding. Ignoring the sting of Kyle's skepticism, George gestured to the scene around them. Look at this city. Look at these people. They aren't just faces in a crowd. They have stories, dreams. They fight every day just to survive. Each word felt like a plea, an attempt to reach a part of Kyle that he feared might be lost forever. But as George spoke, he saw the flicker of something in Kyle's eyes that gave him hope, curiosity, perhaps, or maybe a glimmer of guilt. He took a step closer, the crowded street slowly coming back to life around them. Passers-by resumed their hurried pace, but George and Kyle were suspended in their own universe, their hearts racing together amid a cacophony of chaos. You think you could just burst in here and what? Fix everything with some grand reveal? You haven't been there. You gave me everything and then disappeared. Kyle's voice lost its edge, trembling with buried hurt. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away as if banishing a ghost. That hurt was raw, and George felt it in his marrow. This was not just a moment of confrontation, but an opportunity to mend a fracture that had deepened year after year. I was blinded by success, son, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper now. I thought I could buy you happiness. I never considered I could lose you in the process. Kyle's expression shifted, his resolve wavering. The vulnerability in George's confession tugged at something deep within him, a longing to reconnect with the father who loved him, even if he hadn't shown it in the right way. George knew that they had to find a bridge over this canyon of misunderstanding, a path forward shining in the distance. I need you to understand what it's like to struggle, Kyle. It's not just about dollars and dreams. It's about people. It's about us. He hoped that this honesty would be the first pinprick of light breaking through. Maybe if Kyle could understand the realities beyond wealth, he could help others, too. As they stood facing each other, the tension still thick, suddenly a nearby shout broke through their moment. A woman stumbled, knocking over a cart filled with fruits and vegetables, her face marred with panic. In an instant, George saw Kyle's moment of conflict. The years of privilege battled against the instincts of empathy awakening within him. Would he turn away, retreat back into his world of luxury, or step forward, guided by something deeper? The question hung in the air, their connection more tenuous and vital than ever. Before George could utter another word, Kyle moved a tiny shift that might just signal his choice. Would this small step forward spark a transformation, or would it lead to a larger revelation neither anticipated? The moment hung there, wrapped in unspoken possibilities. Kyle hesitated, his whole body tense with uncertainty. The chaos of the cart tipping over ignited the noise of the street, a cacophony of shouts, and the clatter of fruit against the pavement drew the attention of onlookers. What would he do? At that moment, time felt suspended. He could feel George's anxious gaze boring into him, searching for a flicker of recognition, a nod of acceptance. He took a step forward, a half-hearted gesture, as if his muscles had forgotten what it meant to act on instinct. The sight of the woman struggling to gather the scattered produce seemed to pull at something deep inside him. Threads of compassion tangled with the weight of his upbringing. With a heavy sigh, Kyle fought against the wave of his privileged upbringing, the part of him that whispered to walk away, to brush this aside as someone else's problem. But the look of distress etched on the woman's face resonated louder. As he glanced back at George, he caught a glimpse of something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. Kyle, George urged, his voice tinged with urgency. Help her. It was a simple command, but in it lay a kernel of a bigger truth. Kyle moved, stepping off the curb, and the crowd parted as he crossed the street toward the woman on the ground. Let me help you, he said, his voice a bit steadier than before. He squatted, picking up a few apples that had rolled away. The woman looked up, her wide, surprised eyes meeting his. "Oh, thank you," she stammered, her hands shaking as she reached for the produce he collected. I'm so embarrassed." "Don't be," Kyle replied, surprising even himself with his sincerity. "It happens to everyone." He found himself immersed in a small act of kindness, the sort of thing he had often ignored, blinded by wealth or entitlement. With each piece of fruit, he returned to her cart. As her smile slowly replaced the panic, something shifted within him. He began to recognize the value of these moments, their unfolding simplicity revealing the deep connections of humanity. George watched from a distance, a mix of pride and relief swelling within him. Kyle was finally seeing beyond the veneer of luxury that had cocooned him for so long. This small act, this choice to engage, marked a turning point in their fractured relationship. As the last piece of fruit was returned to the now stable cart, the woman beamed with gratitude. "Thank you, really. You have no idea how much this means to me." Kyle stood there, his heart strangely warm, amidst lingering doubts. He wanted to amplify that feeling, to extend it beyond this moment, this street. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer. "Just trying to make ends meet," she replied, her voice trembling, but now with a hint of strength. "You'd be surprised how hard it can be." Her words echoed in his mind, stirring emotions that had long been suppressed. He glanced back at George, whose eyes shone, filled with understanding and pride. It was a moment that felt like a bridge being built, though brittle and still under construction. It existed nonetheless. Kyle turned back to the woman, wanting to offer more than just fleeting help. "Listen, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." A connection formed, fragile but potent, rooted in shared humanity. As Kyle stepped back, ready to return to George, he felt different, not fully healed, but awakening to the world outside his own. There was a spark within him, igniting curiosity, a desire to understand more of what life had to offer beyond wealth. But then, as George approached, his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He fished it out, glancing at the screen, and his face nodded with concern. "I'm sorry, I have to take this, it's my business," he murmured. Kyle watched him, the excitement of the day dulling momentarily. The echoes of their moment faded into the backdrop of bustling city sounds. There was so much left unsaid, so much more to do. Would this fleeting moment spark a desire within George to stay engaged? Or would the pull of his past drown out the opportunity they had just begun to explore? Kyle felt again the question, hanging in the air, electrifying and uncertain. What would happen next? Would they both take this chance to truly change? Kyle stood there, his senses buzzing. The woman smiled gratefully, yet he could see the glint of exhaustion in her eyes. Life had not treated her kindly, and he couldn't help but think of the privileges he had taken for granted. "Might I ask your name?" he ventured, curiosity overcoming his hesitation. "Maria," she replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "And yours?" "Kyle." The name felt different on his tongue, lighter even. "I'm really glad I could help." As they exchanged small pleasantries, Kyle's mind raced. Would this connection last? Would it lead him somewhere deeper, a world where empathy prevailed over indifference? He glanced at George, still engrossed on his phone, oblivious to their moment. "Maria, do you have a job?" he inquired, trying to shift the conversation to something more substantial. "Just odd jobs, really. I clean homes, and sometimes I get lucky with a few shifts at a cafe down the street," she explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke about her daily struggles. "It's tough, but I manage." Kyle swallowed hard. He felt the weight of her words. Although his own family dimensions were vastly different, he could empathize with the challenge of trying to make ends meet. Each mention of her efforts dug deeper into his heart. "I can't imagine how difficult that must be," he said softly, hoping to bridge the gap between their worlds. A flicker of recognition flashed in her eyes, and suddenly, the busy street seemed quieter. "It's just life, you know," she replied, her voice steadier now. "I do what I can for my kids." At the mention of her children, Kyle's stomach knotted. He thought of his own life, filled with opportunities, yet somehow detached. Kids? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. She nodded, pride evident. 2. My son is in middle school, and my daughter is in 3rd grade. They're my everything. A wave of emotion washed over him. Her love for her children reminded him of his own mother, who had always been there for him, providing in her own unique way. The souls of parents, however different their circumstances, seemed to intertwine through that unwavering bond of love. "I'd like to help," Kyle blurted out, surprising himself yet again. "With your kid's education, or whatever you might need." Maria's expression turned to one of disbelief mixed with suspicion. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want to make a difference." Kyle's resolve solidified. "I've spent too long living in a bubble. Maybe this is my way of popping it." In that moment, something shifted, a thread of connection fortified, anchoring them to this unexpected encounter. Maria's eyes searched his, assessing his sincerity. "I appreciate that, Kyle. But you don't have to," she replied, a tremor in her voice. "But I want to," he insisted gently, an undeniable urgency blooming within him. "There's not enough kindness in the world. I want to change that, even if it's just a little bit." Before she could respond, George cut through their moment, slipping his phone back into his pocket. "Sorry about that business stuff again," he said, looking between Kyle and Maria. "What is going on?" Kyle felt a pang of frustration. Would George understand? Hadn't he just witnessed how one small act could pivot the trajectory of someone's life? "Just helping out," Kyle mentioned curtly, instinctively retreating into a shell, avoiding the weight of George's gaze. George's brow furrowed slightly. "I see. Well, we should get going. Lots to do today," he said, the urgency unmistakable in his tone. But Kyle hesitated. "Wait, I want to stay longer," he murmured, caught in a tug-of-war between his upbringing and this newfound awareness. George's expression shifted to one of annoyance. He glanced at Maria with a frown before looking back at Kyle. "Come on, it's just a street vendor. You really won't waste time here?" Kyle's heart raced. The friction between them surged, flames licking at his resolve. Maria's face fell momentarily, and he realized this wasn't just about fruit on the ground. It was about choices that could shape lives. "George, we can't just walk away." "Not now, Kyle," finally declared, firming his stance. A silence hung between them, thick and heavy. The stakes had grown, revealing layers of tension under the surface. Both George and Maria stared at him, waiting to see which way he would go. Would Kyle allow himself to break free from the expectations of his past? Would he embrace this raw, uncertain path he was stepping onto? Then Maria spoke, her voice a soft beacon in the thick air. "Whatever you decide, Kyle, I appreciate your kindness." But Kyle felt the weight of the moment stretching before him, full of potential and uncertainty. Would he take the leap or slip back into the familiarity of his old life? A quiet resolve settled into his bones. "I want to help. This is just the beginning," but what did that mean for him, for George, and for Maria? And what unseen challenges awaited him as he chose this uncertain path? Kyle's heart raced as he felt the weight of his decision hanging in the air. The bustling street around them seemed to fade into a blur, the honking cars and the chatter of passers-by becoming a distant hum. All he could see was Maria's face, the mixture of hope and doubt reflected in her tired eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked, almost hesitant to let herself believe. "This isn't just a passing thought for you?" "I'm sure," he affirmed, his voice steady. "I want to make this real. I don't want to go back to pretending that everything is fine in my world while there are people like you fighting every day." "But it won't be easy, Kyle," she warned, her brow furrowing. "Help can come with strings. I can't ask you to sacrifice your comfort for my family." His stomach tightened, feeling the pressure of her words. Sacrifice? It sounded daunting, but wasn't that what it meant to care for someone else? A bit of discomfort for a shot at making someone else's life better? He nodded, his resolve hardening. "I know that, but I believe every bit of kindness matters. We all deserve a chance." George shifted impatiently, his expression veering toward annoyance. Come on, man. You don't really need to do this. It's not like you owe her anything, he interjected sharply. Words danced on the tip of Kyle's tongue, defenses ready to shoot back at his friend. Yet a part of him held back, realizing how quickly George's thoughts aligned with privilege over empathy. Maybe I do owe her something, Kyle countered softly, looking directly at Maria. I can't sit back and do nothing while I know I can help. It feels wrong. Silence enveloped them, and Kyle could feel the air thickening with anticipation. Maria blinked slowly as if weighing his words. Then, unexpectedly, her face broke into a guarded smile. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate the thought. Just thinking of an opportunity for them makes me feel lighter. In that moment, a bond solidified between them, something deeper than mere words could express. Just then, a small voice broke through the crowd. Mom? Kyle looked up to see a boy, perhaps 11 years old, standing a few feet away, one hand clutching a small bag tightly. He had the same tired eyes as Maria, the same flicker of hope. Behind him, a little girl bounced on her toes, her messy hair framing a face full of curiosity. Maria's demeanor shifted. Her protective nature flared. What are you doing here, Javier? She scolded gently, rushing forward. I wanted to see if you were coming home soon. He hesitated, glancing at Kyle, uncertainty written all over his face. The kid still needed to know that their mother was cared for, that someone believed in their family. Kyle could feel the weight of their small presence. Hey, buddy, I'm Kyle. Your mom was just telling me about how awesome you and your sister are doing at school, he said, kneeling to their level. The boy's expression morphed from confusion to amazement. You talked to my mom? Yeah, and I think you both deserve a chance at everything, he replied, his heart swelling. Maria stood, proud yet startled. But why? Javier asked, tilting his head. Kyle paused, grappling with how to express that deep-seated urge to change things. Because everyone deserves kindness, including you and your mom. I want to help you both get what you need to succeed. Maria's gaze flicked between her son and him, understanding washing over her features, tempered by disbelief. Are you really okay with this? She finally whispered. Kyle nodded, confidence burgeoning despite lingering uncertainty. He wasn't too sure where this journey would lead, but for the first time, taking a step away from his comfort felt right. Mom, can we trust him? Javier's innocent question hung in the air. Maria's eyes filled with a mix of hope and vulnerability. I hope so, she murmured, still uncertain, yet longing to believe in this small spark of possibility. The moment stretched around them, heavy with unspoken dreams and fears. As the crowd bustled past, Kyle felt an unmistakable shift, a crack in his old life revealing sunlight through the shadows. What lay ahead remained unknown, filled with complexities and challenges, yet it also shimmered with promise. Kyle inhaled deeply, preparing to dive into this new reality. Would he be able to navigate the storm brewing on the horizon? And could this path lead them to a hope neither had dared to imagine? The tension in the air pulsed as Kyle drew in a shaky breath, his heart racing with anticipation. Javier's eyes, wide and searching, locked onto his, and it felt like the weight of the world was resting on just that fleeting moment of connection. Maria hovered nearby, caught between protectiveness and hope, her trust wavering like a candle in the wind. Okay, so what's next? Javier asked, breaking through the silence with childlike curiosity. His question opened the floodgates for Kyle's thoughts, which raced ahead into uncharted territory. For a brief second, Kyle was unsure. What did it mean to help? Was it just about money or tangible support? Or was it something deeper, an unshakable belief in their potential? Well, he began, mustering a smile and trying to stay grounded. First, I want to talk to your mom about how I can help. We can think of ideas together. Like what? Asked the girl, who had been quiet until now, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Maybe I can connect you with people who know how to get scholarships or community programs, he suggested, looking back at Maria for support. We can map out what you all might need. But would that take a long time? Javier interjected, his brow knit with concern. What if we don't have enough time? Kyle felt a pang in his chest. The reality of their situation hit hard. A million thoughts swirled, but he couldn't shy away now. You know what? It depends on what you want. We can get there faster if we really work together. Maria stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. You're really willing to do this? Kyle nodded firmly, feeling a surge of purpose. Yes. I think the abrupt ring of Maria's phone shattered the moment. She fished it out from her pocket, her expression shifting to one of urgency. I have to take this. As he watched her step aside, Kyle's mind churned with what he just committed to. Without hesitation, he turned back to the kids. So, do you guys have a favorite subject in school? Javier's face brightened, the earlier worry replaced by the joy of talking about something he loved. Math. I can solve problems like it's a game. His enthusiasm melted away some of Kyle's apprehension. That's awesome. You must be really good at it. My friend George says he's terrible at numbers. Kyle chuckled, hoping to bridge the gap that still lingered. The little girl piped up. You should teach him. Kyle laughed, the sound echoing in the busy street. But his laughter was tinged with a realization of how vital this new bond could be. When Maria returned, she looked conflicted, her brow furrowed. I'm sorry that was the landlord, she said, her voice strained. We're behind on payments again. They're threatening to evict us. The air grew heavy, and Kyle's heart sank. Can you tell me how much? Maybe I can help with that part. He was willing to take on that weight if it meant keeping the family together. Maria hesitated, glancing at her children for guidance. Kyle, no, it's okay, he insisted. Just give me a number. I can at least help right now with this. She sighed, tears glistening at the edges of her eyes. It's a lot. I can't ask you to put yourself in that position. But what if I want to? What if I'm already invested in this? Kyle pushed back gently, his voice steady yet warm. Maria's gaze lowered, masking a sea of emotions beneath her surface. He yearned to reach out, to reassure her that he meant what he said, that the world felt brighter in moments like this. Are you sure you can handle this? She was testing his resolve, but the answer felt like a volcano ready to erupt inside him. Because if we're doing this, there's no turning back. More people brushed past them, their lives continuing on. But in that moment, it felt like time had come to a standstill, a tiny world encapsulated in fear and hope. I've never been more sure of anything, Kyle replied with a fierce determination. But would he really be able to handle the storm of challenges coming their way? What if this was just the beginning of something much bigger than he could ever imagine? Kyle felt a mix of strength and fear pulsating in his chest as Maria pondered his offer. He couldn't escape the weight of the moment, yet he held on to hope like a lifeline. We just have to figure out what needs to happen next, he encouraged, a quiet confidence settling over his words. Maria finally sighed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. It's 1,500. That's what we owe, she admitted, her voice wavering. I just don't want to take advantage of your generosity. That number means something, huh? Kyle said, sensing the depth of her struggle. But right now, it's just a number. We'll tackle it together. He could see in Javier's eyes an unholy mix of fear and small glimmers of trust. What do you think? Kyle asked him, trying to include the boy in their plan. Would you want to ask your friends for help, too? Javier blinked, hope flickering in his expression. You mean like a fundraiser? Exactly. We can get creative. Maybe a bake sale or a little carnival in your building. Kyle suggested. Every dollar counts, right? Maria looked at her son, the ever-present worry in her eyes mingling with the tentative sprouts of hope. I just don't want you kids to feel like this is your responsibility, she murmured, biting her lip. No, Mom, Javier protested, defiance creeping into his voice. This is our future. If Kyle wants to help, then we should let him. Right, Sophia? Sophia nodded, her small frame vibrating with enthusiasm. Yeah, I can make cookies. I'm really good at it. Kyle chuckled softly, touched by the kid's spark. They had spirit. That's the spirit. Let us make this happen together. His heart swelled, filling with newfound purpose. They were all in this together, and that unity was worth more than any amount of money. As they chatted about ideas, Maria remained quiet, the shadows of her worries looming just behind her eyes. Kyle caught a glimpse. Hey, is there anything else? She hesitated. It's just if the landlord really pushes us, I don't know where we'd go. His stomach dropped. The fear clawing at her voice reminded him that stakes were high. We'll make sure that doesn't happen, Kyle told her firmly. You deserve stability. With each passing moment, Kyle grappled with the thought that he was stepping into a fight like no other. What would it take to truly make a difference? Their plans unfolded, laughter mingling with the weight of pragmatism. As minutes melted into kindred purposes, Kyle felt the knots in his heart loosening. Wait, do you have a plan for how you're going to fundraise? Maria asked, curiosity taking over for tension. Definitely. I was thinking maybe his ideas poured out, but the hum of the city began to fade, replaced with the lightness of their shared vision. The fresh air felt invigorating, as if life itself, with all its uncertainties, had opened a door to new possibilities. But as they spoke, Kyle's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, heart racing. The name on the screen made his insides twist. It was George, his friend from back home, investment banker extraordinaire. Should I take this? Kyle asked, torn between the comfort of his newfound family and the outside world rushing back in. Please, Maria urged, uncertainty weaving through her voice. If it's important, Kyle glanced at them, an internal battle raging between his old life and this new commitment. The path ahead felt both thrilling and dangerous. With a deep breath, he answered, George, what is going on? The conversation began, but in the back of his mind, a question lingered. Could he truly juggle two such different worlds? What would he sacrifice for the sake of this newfound connection? Hey, Kyle, good to hear from you. George's voice sprang from the phone, cheerful yet demanding. We've got a big opportunity coming up. Our firm is eyeing a merger that could double our assets. Kyle listened, caught off guard. The adrenaline from their earlier conversation slipped away, now replaced with the lure of the corporate world he once embraced. That sounds amazing, he started, but his heart wasn't in it. George kept talking, and Kyle could hear the excitement and a hint of impatience as his friend outlined the potential gains. I need you back here, man. We need your input. This could be your big break. Kyle glanced down at Maria and the kids. He saw the spread of papers strewn across the small table, their plans for the fundraiser taking shape. Sophia's notes, all scrawled in a child's handwriting, doodles of cupcakes and games dancing around the margins. Javier was poring over ideas, clearly excited. George, Kyle interrupted. I listened, buddy. George continued. I know you've got your little side project going on, but let us be real. This is once-in-a-lifetime stuff. You'll make a killing. Just think about it. Kyle took a deep breath. This was what he had always wanted: wealth, success, the kind of life that came with a corner office view. But how could he go back to that life after feeling this connection? The weight of it all pressed on him. I get it, he replied slowly. But things have changed for me. Changed? In what way? George asked. Is this about those people you've been helping out? Yes. Kyle shot back, caught off guard by his own intensity. He was surprised by how fiercely he wanted to defend Maria and the kids. It's important. They're facing some real struggles. I can't just walk away now. Silence fell on the line, thick and uncomfortable. Kyle's heart raced. Had he crossed a line? Would George understand? Look, Kyle, George finally said, softer now, I get it. We all have our causes, but you've got to think about your future too. And what if this is my future? Kyle blurted out. What if investing in people is all I want now? What if that's where I find real happiness? George's response was a heavy pause. I don't know what to say to that. Just think about what you're giving up. Kyle hung up the phone, staring at the screen as if it had just betrayed him. He felt like he was standing on a precipice, looking down at two very different paths. He glanced back at Maria, who was watching him, worry etched on her face. What did he say? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck, still torn. Just business stuff, you know. But I think he wants me to come back. Javier looked between the two of them. Are you going to? Kyle swallowed hard. I don't know yet. The uncertainty hung in the air, heavy and thick. The warmth of their earlier plans began to cool, replaced by the chilling reality of decisions unmade. As he absorbed the silence, only the sounds of children laughing outside broke through. A distant siren wailed in the background, echoing the urgency of the moment. "Mom, are we really going to do this?" Sophia's sweet voice cut through, reminding him of what was at stake. Kyle took a deep breath, resolving to turn his gaze back to where his heart truly lay. They were counting on him. "Yes, we are," he finally said. "I promise we will make this happen." But even as he spoke, part of him was haunted by the thought of what he might be leaving behind. Would he be able to fully commit to this new life? And what would it take to sever ties with everything he knew? That question danced in his mind, poised on the brink of an answer. A swirl of excitement and fear leapt in his chest as he wondered. Was he ready to turn his back on the life he built for himself to embrace what the heart truly desired? Kyle sat back in his chair, watching as the kids worked together, their laughter a sweet symphony that filled the modest kitchen. Sophia and Javier were so absorbed in their ideas for the fundraiser, their chatter excited and full of energy. Each funny remark from Sophia brought a smile to his face, anchoring him to this moment. "Dad, can we have cookie decorating as one of the games?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide with expectation. "Of course, and maybe we can have a cupcake for every kid who participates." Javier jumped in, practically bouncing on his seat. "See, you guys have such great ideas," Kyle said, his heart swelling with pride. They had lost faith in this venture, and it made him rethink everything. Did he really want to trade this buzz of hope for numbers on a spreadsheet? Just then, Maria joined them, clutching a large stack of flyers to be printed. "What do you think about putting these in the neighborhood? I think they really draw on donations." "Perfect," Kyle praised, a warmth blooming in his chest. As he watched Maria hand the flyers to the kids, he felt a tug of clarity. This was the future he wanted to invest in, the one filled with laughter, community, and purpose. Yet, the nagging thought of George still lingered in the back of his mind. That corporate life had been about ambition, but this new path was about fulfillment. It grabbed hold of the core of him that had long been buried under long hours and late meetings. "Hey, how about we take our flyers to the park after dinner?" Maria suggested, interrupting his reverie. "We can ask some people if they're interested." "Great idea," Kyle agreed. The glimmer of light he felt with every word she spoke reminded him of the strength they could build, the people they could help together. But as they sketched out plans, darkness crept in. A creeping doubt slinked through his mind as he picked up his phone again, scrolling through messages from George. Was he really prepared to abandon all the risks and rewards that came with the corporate climb? He racked his brain, thinking of the friends he'd forged connections with at that high-powered firm. They had shared dreams of success, exchanged late-night strategies, and celebrated victories at overpriced restaurants. But in growing their careers, had they lost touch with their humanity? The kids were still buzzing with excitement around him, a warm, inviting bubble, but he felt the edges of that bubble hardening around him. The world outside hummed with a fear of not choosing wisely. He could hear his own heartbeat turning into a whisper of worry. Suddenly, Maria's voice pulled him back to the present. "Kyle, you got to promise me we will make this happen. We're in this together." "I promise," he said, the weight of the words settling in. But as he looked into her hopeful eyes, a memory of George's voice echoed. "What are you giving up? Did choosing this gentler path mean losing touch with ambition and success?" He needed to see beyond just today, and yet the thought of leaving this life felt suffocating. The moment hung between them, the tension palpable as the kids continued planning their fundraiser, blissfully unaware of their father's inner turmoil. With determination flashing in his eyes, Kyle finally made a decision. "Let us do this." But deep down, he feared the repercussions of that choice. He just hoped he wouldn't regret it tomorrow. Yes, he glanced outside. Adventure seemed to beckon with every rustle of the leaves, an open invitation to a world he was still learning to navigate. Would this new journey lead to contentment? His heart raced at the uncertainty, and the evening stretched ahead, full of promise and potential. Then, just as he was about to embark down this beautiful, chaotic road, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Who could that be? He wondered, a mix of curiosity and apprehension swirling in him. As Kyle opened the door, time seemed to freeze. Standing on the threshold was a familiar figure, his friend George, looking out a place in the world Kyle had just begun to embrace. "What are you doing here?" Kyle's voice wavered between surprise and concern. He hadn't expected George to seek him out here, where reality was stark and life was raw. "How to find you," George declared, his voice laced with urgency. "I was worried. You seemed different. I thought maybe you needed a wake-up call." Kyle took a steadying breath, memories flooding back, memories of power suits and polished conference tables. "I'm fine. I'm with people who matter. I'm doing something good." He tried to convey the warmth he felt in this new space, the laughter of the kids still echoing in his mind. George's brow furrowed. "Good? Come on, Kyle. You really think you can turn your back on everything we work for? This INCognito charity, it's a sinking ship. It's not about that." Kyle snapped, the tension rising. "This is real. These people, they're family. They're trying to survive." He pointed behind him at Maria and the kids, who were curiously peeking out from the kitchen, the smiles frozen on their faces. George scoffed, dismissing the joy radiating from them. "Family? You hardly know them. You're throwing away a successful future for a handful of naive dreams." The room grew quiet. Kyle could feel the weight of George's words clawing at his confidence, but he clenched his fists. Naive? Is understanding suffering naive? I watched my dad succeed. I watched you build an empire, but at what cost? Nothing made us whole. What cost? George challenged, his tone sharp. You can't expect to live off dreams. This is the real world, Kyle, not some fairy tale. You need a plan, not charity work with strangers. You don't get it. Kyle felt heat rising in his chest. I don't want that life anymore. I want to help, to actually impact lives, not just line my pockets with cash while ignoring the people who are struggling. George's face tightened, his eyes narrowing as he faced the truth he felt swirling around them. And what about the life we built? Your future? There was the flare of fear disguised as ambition. Kyle met his gaze, determination surging like a wave. I realized my life wasn't defined by where I stood in a bank account, that I could find worth in love and connection. This is where I want to be. A heavy silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the distant sounds of laughter from the kids. Maria watched from the kitchen, her heart pounding. This confrontation could shift everything. George's expression softened slightly, a flicker of understanding sparking behind his rigid facade. But you'll get hurt, Kyle. People will disappoint you. It won't be easy. I know that, he replied, a soft strength infusing his voice. But I want to try. I want to learn how to struggle alongside people rather than isolate myself in wealth. George hesitated, then shook his head. You're being foolish. This INCognito going to end well. But Kyle stood firm. Maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Impact doesn't come from a position. It's shaped in moments, and this moment is mine. As he stepped back, Kyle caught a glimpse of Maria's smile, and the children whispered among themselves, excitement bubbling in the wake of his choice. Please, just think about it, George implored, his voice lacking the earlier conviction. I have thought about it. I'm not backing down. This is who I'm becoming, Kyle replied, feeling lighter yet stronger in the storm of emotions swirling around him. With a heavy sigh, George backed away, frustration blending with reluctant respect. Fine, just don't forget who you are. The door closed between them with a thud, marking a shift in Kyle's life. Standing there, he turned toward the kitchen. The children were still full of energy. Maria's eyes twinkled, filled with hope. We're going to make this happen, he announced, his determination radiating warmth. Little hands clasped around his, and they all huddled together, whispering plans for the future. As laughter rippled through the air, Kyle felt a profound truth settle in him. They were creating something together, binding their diverse worlds into something beautiful. Outside, the sun began to set, casting hues of pink and gold across the horizon. Kyle breathed in deeply, a sense of clarity wrapping around him like a warm blanket. This was it. He could embrace vulnerability with a fierce heart and build connections that mattered. The worries lingered, but so did the hope igniting his spirit. With a renewed commitment, he looked at Maria, Javier, and Sofia. "Let's get to work." Together, they cheered, echoing his belief that with unity, anything was possible. And so, as Kyle stepped into a new journey not just for himself, but for all those around him, he knew he had found his place in this magnificent tapestry of life, woven together by kindness, strength, and an irrevocable quest for change. This was just the beginning, the dawn of a life bursting with purpose, connectedness, and transformation. And remember, folks, this is a call to action. Don't hesitate to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover what matters. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. You need to support this channel. Only true fans understand the importance of taking action. Don't wait, not even one more second.